everyone, it's Gina from orchidandopal.com, and I'm back today with a brand new necklace tutorial, a design that's based solely from the contents of the recent Beads of the Month club that I received. This one being the Hot and Trendy club. If you hadn't seen that unboxing, or if you're interested in signing up for that subscription, I'll leave the link and the coupon code that I have for that down below, and the unboxing video I will link in the corner. This design happens to incorporate 5 out of 8 shapes that came in that package, and the theme that I had received is called Mermaid Elegance, so the beads came in shades of purple, silver, and turquoise. I'll leave a full list of materials down below, as well as links to where you can find these beads, and I also have 2 other examples of colorways I have put together based on beads that I already had in my stash. And this one here is just slightly different because, as you can see, I used some of the mini daggers as opposed to the SuperUnos that I did in this one. As a brief rundown though, we will be using some Octo beads, some Arcos, some Gekkos, some Delos Par Puca, some SuperUnos, and also 15-0 and 11-0 seed beads. So besides all of those, you'll need your tools like your scissors and your jewelry pliers. I'll be using a couple of wire guards at the end of my piece to attach my clasp and findings to, and I will be using a size 11 beading needle today with some 6-pound Fireline. I'm going to start out with about 6 feet of that, which should have us covered for an 18-inch necklace. So if you'll be making this with me today, you can go ahead and gather up your materials and thread your needle with a beading thread and an amount of thread that you're comfortable with, and we will jump into this tutorial. Alright, so we're going to start out by using these 3 types of beads that you see here, the Octo, the Arcos, and the Delos. These are all 3-hole beads, and it might help you in the beginning to maybe start setting up your beads just like that, because that's the order in which we're going to start stringing them on. And these all being 3-hole beads, the holes line up very well. And to get started, we're just going to be dealing with the middle holes. So for now, don't worry about the holes on either side. Just deal with the hole that is located in the center, and sew straight through in this sequence as long as you'd like your necklace to be. So I received the double club, as I said, so I have enough to make a full necklace. I'll be making one that's approximately 18 inches or so. If you received maybe the single club, perhaps you don't have enough to do a full necklace. Or if you want to conserve your beads, you can always just do a beaded front portion of the necklace and then attach either other types of beads around the sides and the back, or you can attach some chain to it. So that's another option for you if you don't want to do a full beaded necklace. But first of all, just go ahead and start laying out your beads perhaps, and then what you're going to do is simply go through the middle holes of each of these beads, just like this, starting with an Arcos, then a Delos, and then we want an Octo. And this is one more thing I cannot stress enough, is make sure you check all the holes before you're putting these on. And this is supposed to go through the middle hole, by the way, but I wanted to poke that through because that right-hand hole looked a little bit clogged. So make sure that all of your holes are not clogged, or not clogged to the extent that you can't poke your needle through, because you don't want to get through this whole process and then find out that one of the holes is not drilled all the way through. Ask me how that happened. It can happen to anybody. All right, so we are starting with this sequence and continuing on. Now the Delos in the other direction, the next Arcos, another Arcos, Delos, Octo bead, and I just want to check all the holes on these just to make sure. And you can see right off the bat that that one looks a little bit clogged, so I'm going to take my needle and actually make sure that I'm going to be able to go back through that one. Yep, it looks like we're good. So most of them you will be able to, you just need to poke your needle through it, or you can take a bead awl and get rid of any debris that might be in there. But there may be that one bead that you find that you get to that just will not unclog without breaking, or it may not be drilled altogether. Now that's a more rare circumstance, but just giving you a heads up. So I'm going to keep going here. Delos, Arcos, Arcos in the other direction, Delos in the other, Octo, and I have my needle on my right hand side. I'll pull these together so you can see the sequence as it's coming together. Then another Delos and another Arcos. So keep beading in this manner through the center holes of these 3-hole beads until you have about 17 sequences just like this on your thread, and that's if you want to make the same size necklace. And I'm going to call each of these a sequence. So string on about 17 of those groupings of beads just like that, beginning with an Arcos and ending with an Arcos. And I will meet you back after I have gone through all those beads. You have a couple options for your tail thread. You can either add a stop bead if you want to. You can also keep a longer tail, one that you will use to pass back through the whole necklace in the other direction later, because this is one of those designs where we're going to be passing back and through several times and layering in additional beads in between. Regardless of what you want to do, you can always add in more thread if you need to. I'm going to proceed by leaving about 2 feet of a tail thread on the side and then just continuing with my working thread to add this entire sequence. So keep stringing those beads on and we will meet back after they are all on your thread. All right, once you have your 17 sections or however long you want to make your beadwork, you want to have something that looks similar to this. So just take a moment, make sure that you've gone through all of the center holes and none of them are off just before you go through any other steps in the process. And you may find it helpful to clamp off your beadwork at the opposite end of your working thread. And now we're going to focus on the outer holes of this necklace. And also we're going to be bringing in our Gekko beads and our SuperUno, so you can go ahead and get those out. And we're going to return back through those outer or bottom holes and start adding some of those beads in. So go ahead and get those together and we will continue on to the next step. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm currently coming out of this center hole of this last Arcos, and I'm going to swing around and go back through the Arcos and the Delos, again, coming through those bottom holes this time. And I'm just going to shift this more vertically so it's a little bit easier for me to work. And underneath all of your Octo beads, you're going to be placing 5 11-0 seed beads. So don't actually go through the Octo bead at this point. You're just going to go around it. You're going to go back through that bottom hole later to reinforce all this. So just for now, pick up 5 of your 11-0s. And once you have those on your needle, you can pass then through the next bottom hole of the Delos and the next Arcos bead. Just like that, and pull that through. And you can see how those 11-0s wrap right underneath that Octo bead very nicely. And then when you get to the point where you have 2 Arcos beads, that's where you're going to fill it in with a SuperUno, then a Gekko. And this is where you can get a little bit more creative. If you don't have SuperUnos, you could use mini daggers, perhaps use a regular size dagger and a couple seed beads on either side in between this section. You can kind of customize that if you don't have those 2 particular beads. And then you're going to go through the next Arcos and the next Delos bead. And once you pull that, you can see that those fill in that little gap nicely, and it's going to start to make our piece curve a little bit, which is what you want when you're making a necklace. You don't want it to be all in a straight vertical line like a bracelet. Now that we're back to the Octo again, we're going to pick up 5 of our 11-0s just like we did before. Skip over the Octo bead, don't go through it, and go through the bottom holes of the next Delos and the next Arcos bead, and pull so that those seed beads wrap right around the bottom of the Octo. Now that we're back to the point where we need to fill in the space between the two Arcos, we're going to pick up our SuperUno again, our Gekko, and the next SuperUno, and we're going to go through the next Arcos and Delos bottom holes. Pull, and that's what we have so far. Also note, don't worry about the fact that you have a little bit of thread right here. Use a thread that blends in with your beadwork as best you can. You probably do that anyway. But we're also going to be adding a wire guard up here, and you can always hide this with seed beads if that bothers you. But really, it's not going to be that big of a deal to have this tiny piece of thread. So keep going, adding those beads in, the seed beads and the SuperUno and the geckos, all the way down till you get to the other end of the piece and you're coming out of the bottom holes of your Delos and Arcos on this end, and we will continue on with our next steps. All right, and welcome back. So hopefully your piece is looking something similar to this, and you can see I'm starting to run out of my working thread. So I'm gonna go ahead and knot this one off by weaving this one back in and making several knots that I'm hiding in the piece. And then I'm going to pop my needle on the long tail thread that I left that's coming out of the middle of this Arcos, and we'll pick up from there. In our next step, we're going to be beginning to add on our wire guard and going through the top holes of the piece, and we'll need some size 15-0 and size 11-0 seed beads in that step. So if you need to, go ahead and tie off your current working thread and pick up with a new piece of thread if you don't have enough, and we'll continue on with the inner or top holes of the piece. All right, so with that other end tied off and my needle on my longer tail thread, we're now ready for the next step, and I'm going to start out by adding a wire guard, which is going to sit between the middle hole of this Arcos and the inner hole. So we're going to go ahead and sew through the wire guard and pull that down to our work, and then sew through the other side and go directly through the Arcos. Again, that's the top holes, and the Delos, and pull and just let that thread sit in the groove of the wire guard if you're using one. Now if you're not using one, that's fine. You can just make a loop of seed beads right there that would be a similar or large enough size to add your jump rings and your findings and all of those things that you need to add at the end. So that's something that's up to you. Now, when you get to your next Octo bead, that is where you are going to be placing a 15-0 on either side. So let's pick up a 15-0. Let's go through the top hole of the Octo bead. Let's pick up another 15-0. Go through the Delos and the next Arcos through those top holes and pull. And then when we get to the point in between the two Arcos, that's where we're going to pick up an 11-0 and put that in between. Continue on through the Arcos and the Delos, and repeat again with our 15-0s on either side of the Octo. So picking up one, going through the upper hole, and repeat, pick up a 15-0, go through the next two beads, and you can see this is still slightly loose, and it's going to tighten up as we go. Then we'll pick up an 11-0 and continue on. So you're going to repeat the same thing all the way around the inner section or top holes, however you want to look at them, of your beadwork, adding in those 15-0s on either side of the Octo and an 11-0 in between each of the two Arcos all the way around. Keep doing that, and then we will meet back and continue on with the next step. All right, so now once you've added all of those beads in around the inner portion, you're ready to add your wire guard on the other side. So I'm coming out of the top hole of this Arcos, And now I'm going through a wire guard and through the other side, going through the middle hole of the Arcos and that Delos. I'm going to pull my thread to the wire guard. Then I'm going to turn around. I'm going to go through the bottom hole of the Octo bead, just like that. Then I'm actually going to step up and go through the middle of the Delos and the middle of that Arcos on the end. And then I'm going to turn around and go down through the Arcos and the Delos. And this is going to position us so that now we can go through the bottom hole of the Octo beads that we hadn't gone through before. So go through the bottom hole of the Octo that you get to next and continue on through the bottom holes of all of these multi-hole beads, plus going back through the SuperUno, the Gekko, the next SuperUno, as many beads as you can get through at one time, continuing on through the next Arcos and Delos. And again, you want to go through the bottom hole of that Octo that you hadn't previously gone through and continue on. So continue through that row of holes once again and catch the bottom hole of each of those Octo beads all the way around, and then we will meet back. All right, at this point your necklace is pretty much together, and if you have excess thread, you're welcome to weave back through in any way you want just to tighten up anything that may be a little bit loose on you. But overall, the shape of it should be just perfect for a necklace. Has this nice curve to it, and you don't want to make it too tight to the point where it buckles, but you also don't want to show any gaps in between your beads. So as long as you're happy with that, then you are ready to swing back through your piece, tie and knot off your thread. Then you can add your jump rings to each side as well as the clasp of your choice, and even an extender chain if you want to make it even more adjustable. So I'm going to do that, and then we will be right back and admire our work. So here is our necklace all said and done. I hope yours looks great as well. I hope you had fun choosing some colors if you went with a different color scheme. Again, here's a couple of other examples of some other colors I used just with things that I had already had on hand. So feel free to leave me a comment below if you are planning to give this a try, or if you have given it a try, or anything else you'd like to say. I hope this gave you some ideas as to use some of these more unique bead shapes. I think this purple and turquoise color scheme is so much fun that Beads of the Month put together. And once again, I will leave the link to that subscription right down below and the coupon code that I have for them, as well as the full materials list with links to everything right down below the video. I want to thank you all for watching. I really appreciate having you here for another tutorial. I hope you will give the video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it and if this was easy for you to follow. Also, feel free to hit that subscribe button while you're here because I'd love to have you back. And as usual, I will be back again real soon. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, happy beading.